America will always choose independence and cooperation over global governance, control, and domination. We cannot allow a regime that chants death to America to possess the means to deliver a nuclear warhead. China's market distortions and the way they deal cannot be tolerated. My administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
President in the moment at
yeah,
that time.
Let's bring in Nikki Haley. She was the governor of the great state of New York, and then the president appointed her as
South Carolina.
South Carolina. That's
She lives in New York now.
I've lived in 2 states, and I love them both equally. But anyway, congratulations on your success as the UN ambassador. We love you so much. And I know you were in the room when the laugh happened. Sometimes the media can portray it as one thing, and it's not that at all. What was it like, and why that reaction?
The media's got this so wrong. I deal with these leaders every single day. I know exactly how they think. Do they love America? No. Do they respect America? Now they do. When he said that, they love how honest he is, and it's not diplomatic, and they find it funny. I mean, when he goes and he is very truthful, they kind of are taken back by it. And
they're not used to it.
They're not used to it. But let me tell you, all day yesterday, they were falling over themselves to get a picture with him, to talk about how great his speech was, how strong it was. Whether he said good things about them or not, they love that he's honest with them. And they've never seen anything like it. And so there's a respect there. I saw that the media was trying to make it something disrespectful. That's not what it was. They love to be with him. That's the only time you'll see that entire chamber standing room only.
So it was the echo laugh. For example, I think a part of it was he pulled off the prompter and reacted in real time. It never happens at the UN. You read your story, the world is watching, you ad-libbed it.
And that made them love him even more.
So listen to how some proceed, and you deal with this every day, but Axios, who tends to be fair, their lead story is Trump's hug the thug, flick off your friend's worldview. That's how they viewed the speech. What's your reaction to that?
I think you have to understand the president. He is always talking to his audience. When he was talking about Kim, he was talking to Kim. He was sitting there saying there's a relationship to be had, there's things to be done. When he's talking about OPEC and the issues that need to happen, he's talking to the Saudis, saying release more oil, we've got to get these gas prices down. He is very good at knowing his audience, and he's talking straight to that person or country that he's trying to get a message
So
to.
when he's talking about how trade deals with the United States have got to be fair and reciprocal, he's talking to China, he's talking to Canada, he's talking to whom?
He's talking to Mexico, he's talking to India, he's talking to, he just finished with South Korea, with Japan. What he is doing is saying, I'm not going to sit there and talk about the World Trade Organization. We're going to do direct negotiations. He just did a great one with South Korea. You're going to see he did one with Mexico. He's redoing all of these negotiations. So for the first time, Americans aren't suffering. It's fair for America. And the countries know that it's unfair. They know it has to change. They don't like it, but they know he's right.
Well, the president had a message for Iran. You had a message for Iran. So did Mike Pompeo. So did John Bolton. John Bolton saying there will be hell to pay if Iran continues aggression. You've said if European allies do business with Iran, they will face sanctions. What's your message now for the American people that are worried about Iran?
That we do need to be worried about Iran. Honestly, Iran is the biggest issue that we have right now. I think you can look, we're having multiple attacks from their proxies on our embassy in Iraq. They are very involved, whether it's Lebanon or Yemen. They are constantly in the middle of trouble, and they're not on our side. And what we have to do is make sure that the international community knows trying to do business with Iran is only helping terrorists. You're not helping the international community.
Ambassador, is it true that the European Union is trying to give incentives for the EU companies to go in Iran, which is a really thumb in, it's a thumb in our eye? And these companies are not responding because they don't think it's a good investment because we're not involved. Is that the scenario as you see it?
The European Union has this so wrong, and it's all because of their ego and their pride. You've got Ms. Mogherini, who helped get this deal together. She's trying to hold a deal together because she did it, but she's not looking out for the best interests of the European countries who, number one, don't want to do business with Iran, and you can have that proof by the fact that companies are dropping deals with Iran. They're not trying to get deals with Iran because they get who they're dealing with.
Sure. What did you make of former Secretary of State John Kerry? It sounds like some have depicted it as meddling, saying, hey, just wait this administration out. Things will get better.
What Secretary Kerry did was not only disrespectful, it was hurtful to America. When we are sitting there trying to get Iran to come to the table in a way that they understand the ballistic missile testing has to stop, the support of terrorism has to stop, they have to quit selling arms to the Houthis. When all those things, to have another American go in and say, don't worry about it, that absolutely is anti-American, and it was hurtful to the American people. And if Secretary Kerry was Secretary of State, he would not want anyone doing that.
But he says Dr. Kissinger does that, and no one ever complains.
So let me tell you, huge fan of Dr. Kissinger, and very respected man, because he never goes out of the country without telling our administration. When he comes back, he tells our administration. He works with us and tells us what he's doing all the time.
And Kerry doesn't do that.
Secretary Kerry, we didn't know that conversation happened. We didn't know what he was doing. And Dr. Kissinger, you never have to worry that he's not on America's side.
Right. Ambassador, you're sitting next to the president at the UN. You walked in with him. You introduced him. What is your reaction to the criticism about him, and what's it like to work with him? You know him on a personal level.
It's gotten so disgusting, really. I mean, the idea that he's not mentally fit, the idea that we would be talking about the 25th Amendment, none of that is true. It couldn't be farther from the truth. You've got a president who is nonstop going all the time. The cabinet's just trying to keep up with him. I mean, he's getting things done left and right. How can you honestly think a man who doesn't know what he's doing is getting this much done on jobs, on trade deals, on foreign policy? Look at the stock market. I mean, Americans are living better than they ever have, and you're going to go question his leadership.
But when you
watch the mainstream media, though, according to the Media Research Center, 90% of the coverage of Donald Trump is negative. And yet, you know, his popularity, his favorability number has remained steady or has gone up a little bit, which is a shocking number considering all the vast avalanche of bad publicity he's gotten.
You know, what's interesting is I looked at the media yesterday, and they all want to talk about what the world view of the president is. What they need to understand is the world doesn't understand the media in America right now. Like, they see what the president's doing. That is what makes us look bad. It's when they're constantly... I was talking to a world leader yesterday. I won't name which leader it was. And he said, I can't believe that they would ever talk about impeachment, 25th Amendment. He said, do they understand this is America?
Was it the South Korean president? Because he's praising him.
It was not the South Korean president, but I'm telling you, leaders don't understand why this is even a conversation, and they find it dangerous for our country.
But when you talk about North Korea in particular, as much as it's better than it was a year ago, you can't say that we are actually getting closer to denuclearization, can you?
I think that, well, first of all, yes, huge progress in the way that haven't had ballistic missile testing. Look at their 70th parade. I remember a year and a half ago looking at those parades, and it was nothing but nuclear weapons back and forth. None of that this time. And you've got Kim asking for another meeting, and you've got him starting to socialize with the region and trying to find peace. We've come a long way. We've got a long way to go, because we've got to get his confidence and trust that we're not going to attack him. And he's got to give us the trust that, of course, he's going to do what we say. But every leader is thanking the president for what he did on North Korea.
And Kim Jong-un is a different kind of negotiator than his father.
Very much so. And the president tapped that. He tapped that. That's why Kim sent him a nice letter saying, I want to meet again. I mean, the president's very good when you put him in front of a foreign leader.
One thing is pretty clear. I think you're getting respect from both sides. I've watched you on every single show. You have the answers, especially as a governor of South Carolina. I don't know how you have the international, the depth of knowledge on all these things. And when they say one of the keys is, Ambassador, the deal you cut, you have direct access to the president. So any type of gray area you can call and you can relay. Is that true? How important is that?
He's unbelievably responsive. I mean, I go to D.C. once a week. I see him. I talk to him. If I need anything, I can pick up the phone. If I disagree with something, he listens. He may do it. He may not do it. But I am very appreciative of the relationship I have with the president. The reason I'm able to do the job I do is because he's so involved. Last night, he went and hosted members of the Security Council and their foreign ministers. Think about that. Not world leaders, the ones that make the decisions every day on those North Korean sanctions, on the arms embargo.
I bet they love that.
That buys so much goodwill for the United States, and he doesn't have to do it.
Ambassador, you wear the South Carolina emblem. It's so cool to see that when you're in front of all these world leaders. Governor of South Carolina, UN ambassador, so now you have a global view. Any plans to run for office, run for president one day as a female? It'd be wonderful.
Well, first of all, I will tell you, you never forget where you come from.
Right.
So that is why I wear my South Carolina necklace. And I will tell you, I have not thought once about running for president. You know, these things where people talk about 2020, I would never run against the president. I would campaign for the president. I mean, without question, he's done such a great job. And so I'm good about not thinking about the future.
Well, you know what, you know what you need to think about, though? Traffic, because now there's gridlock here between here and the United Nations.
And I apologize to New Yorkers for that.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thanks so much.
Always
We're navigating the subway. We're okay.